Welcome into the Train with the Best podcast, a podcast by Fit Pros for Fit Pros. I'm Craig Hoffman, a fitness and media professional.
And I'm Chris Gorres, master trainer and international presenter.
And today, Chris, we're going to talk about the 40-yard dash. Kind of. We're going to talk about the 40-yard dash for sure, because the whole point of this podcast and kind of something very interesting that you're doing this weekend is the 40-yard dash is not some gate or something that should be gate kept. And actually, it's not that important. But that is kind of what the whole thing is about. So it's, today we're going to talk about this kind of combine environment. And of course, this is hilarious coming from me because for those that don't know and just know me from this podcast, my day job, when I say I'm a media professional and a fitness professional, I host a daily radio show on the Team 980 in Washington, D.C., sports talk radio show where for much of the next month, I will be talking about the NFL draft and the NFL combine and the lead up and after the combine, we're talking about 40 times and GPS data and all this stuff that comes down to these testing type of things. But in the training world, realistically, while that stuff does matter to NFL scouts and NFL general managers for the draft, and there are other metrics that do matter, there's a lot of other stuff that matters more. And I think that the as you put it, so for those that don't follow Chris on Instagram, what are you doing? Come on, if you listen to this podcast, get with the program, Matt Trainer Gorres. Right. But you kind of were tired of seeing some of the snake oil salesman stuff around the 40, and thus you decided to do something about it. So let's talk it out here on the podcast.
Well, before we get into that, like you actually just brought up a little bit of kind of what some of the issue is, right? Like, part of your job as a media personality is to give the people what they want. And what they want to hear about is the combine. The NFL has done a fantastic job of making the NFL matter during the offseason, right? Like, this was one of their genius things that they've done is they make the NFL matter in every month of the year. In January and February, you've got the playoffs and the Super Bowl. In March, you've got the combine. In April, you've got the draft. In May, you've got OTAs. And then it's all the way up into training camp, right? And the NFL has done a really good job. And the media also does their job in talking about these events, specifically with the combine. And the main thing at the combine is the 40-yard dash. Everybody wants to see how somebody's going to run, how fast they run. Now, you and I know behind the scenes that the 40-yard dash is maybe the fifth or sixth thing on the list that people are looking for, right? Like, depending the combine exists.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, depending on the position. And they're really just getting a confirmation of what they see on film. But before somebody is on anybody's board, for you to be on somebody's draft board, it had nothing to do with your 40-yard dash. Now, that again, it's a question that gets asked, but it might be the fifth or sixth question that gets asked. And at the combine, the first question that gets asked is, are you healthy? That knee injury that you had, is that still going to be an issue?
Before all that, honestly, the number one thing that gets asked is not even asked. It's evaluated on tape, how you get invited to the combine in the first place. It's, can you play?
Yes, and that's what's the film answers that question, right? So if you pop on film and now all of a sudden you're on somebody's draft board, the reason why people are coming to the combine to ask you questions is to ask you questions about your health, not necessarily about how fast you run. They know how fast you run already, right? But the NFL is the leader in this, right? So college sports follows that, high school sports follows that, and then the 40 has become a thing where you pay to go to these combines and you pay for all of this and that. And then there are people that are out there that are selling a 40-yard dash program to get you recruited. And again, that's just not the truth. The truth is right now, high school recruits are going through a really tough time because there's just not enough spots to go to high school players anymore. College teams are building out their rosters through the draft, through the portal. So your film, if I'm looking at your film and I'm comparing you to the Division I talent or the Division I level, I'm also comparing you to the other person who's already playing Division I at a smaller school, right? So it doesn't matter what high school you play at, unless you play at Good Counsel or DeMatha up there in DC, where they know that you're playing at a level that's
right. Or you're playing elite Texas high school football. You're class 7A in Alabama. You are, at one of the private schools, prep schools down in Florida, IMG Academy, whatever.
Yeah. So a Power 5 school is not going to give you. There's just not that many offers out there anymore, right? Unless you're 6'4", 350, which I can't coach, right? Like if you're 6'7" and 330 pounds, you're a Division I prospect. Not because you can play football, but because football coaches know I can't just find that. I can't coach that into somebody. And if there's a 6'1" kid out there and he's 280 and he can play, we'll go get him in a couple years from the portal, right? That's what's happening right now. It's not because of you're not being able to run a fast 40, right? But what's being sold to these parents is, hey, if you get your 40-yard dash down to this or to that, now all of a sudden you're going to get a D1 offer. Like, what? No. Let's stop that right now. You're not going to get a D1 offer because you ran a 4.7, a 4.5, a 4.3. You're getting a D1 offer because you can play on tape, and then they ask those questions later on, right? But
and I would say if you can run a 4.3, now we're talking about a different thing, or a 4.2.
We're talking about different things.
But like if you can get your 40 down from a 4.7 to a 4.5, it ain't helping you that much. And that's like if you're running a 4.3 or a 4.2, especially if like a lot of these are hand timed, whatever. So the 4.2 might pop up a little bit more than the lasers at the NFL Combine, where you're actually running a 4.45 and it's timed as a 4.2 by some coach with a stopwatch who's not quite as quick as he used to be. But like if you're getting a shot because you have an elite trait, and I think that what is really like, and I think also another problem, if you're going to blame the media, I'm going to blame the trainers. I'm going to blame you, Chris. Even though
we're all a part of this.
But like, if you're looking up to someone like Matt Gates, I have the name right, Matt at XPE, who is incredible at what he does. In terms of getting guys ready for the combine. They have some of the best 40 times every single year. They're good at scouting. They get the fast guys and they make them even faster. And they perfect their technique. Obviously, Yo Murphy and Jeremy Hills, two guys that are great friends of ours, do a tremendous job. The guys at Exos, guys and gals at Exos, do a tremendous job. Like there's all these places that we consider to be the best trainers in the country. And we consider them the best based off the fact that they get guys ready for the combine at a super elite level. Realize that as soon as the combine is over, they scrap that training. Well, not as soon as the combine is over. They then convert to pro days. But as soon as the pro days are over, if they continue to go to that facility in preparation for mini camp, a rookie mini camp, and ultimately the off season, and they go back in July, but to get ready for training camp, they're not training the 40 anymore. They're training guys to get faster, and they're training guys to get stronger and become better players. And they're doing reaction drills, and they're doing all the things to make them better at the actual sport. The problem for of looking at it through this lens of the NFL Combine and looking at all performance training through that lens, because it is the most high profile, biggest event where that is tested in that way, is it then gets confused as the actual most important thing. No, it's the most important thing for a very short stretch from the end of college football season to the end of February at the NFL Combine. And, from a business model standpoint, Exos and XPE and all these places, they make bank off that stuff. So that is a huge deal for them. And if you want to be in that world, that's fine. But if you are not training guys training for the NFL Combine,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
If you are training high school athletes, if you are training, and even if they're football players who in the future might train for it, you are not doing them any favors outside of maybe doing a couple of sessions of technique work if they have a camp coming up. But to make that the focus of your training is not doing the best you can by them.
Yeah, and you just unpacked a lot there, and I want to get into some of that because
that's why I'm a media professional. Damn it!
And again, you're a media professional, and you do a good job of what you do, right? You're great at what you do. You're making the combine matter, which is what you're supposed to do in February and in March when there's no football to watch. You're supposed to make this thing matter.
It is an important part of the NFL process, right?
It is.
My job is to talk about in that context, right, is to talk about the NFL. It's not to do this podcast. This podcast is about training. That radio show is about the NFL, and trainers need to remember that.
Right. And like you said, it's important in February, but we're not doing that after pro day. Right? Just like your job in the media, you're not talking about the combine anymore come August. We don't talk about that anymore. We're talking about training camp. And then we're talking about whatever play just happened, whatever game just happened. That's the most important thing right now, right? So we have to put all those things into context. And like you said, I'm a part of this. I recognize that. That's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I recognize that I'm in this game. There are people that come to me because, hey, like their livelihoods are on the line here, and we're talking about the top 1% of football athletes that are being looked at for the NFL. Because to be even considered for the NFL means you are a hell of a football player, right? We are not talking about that with these kids and these families now. We are talking about 14, 15, 16-year-olds who are all over social media. Their parents are all over social media. They're seeing who's getting what offer from what school. And like they're comparing themselves to everybody else that's out there. And it sucks, because you're also comparing yourself to whoever it was in the past that may have gotten an offer from whatever Division I school, Power 5 school, and they got an offer when they were a freshman in high school. Well, those times are long gone. That's not happening anymore. Right. So not only are they dealing with that and dealing with competing with the transfer portal, but now they're dealing with so-and-so says they ran a 4.5, like, and that's why they're being recruited. No. One, let me just put this out here. Amon-Ra St. Brown ran a 4.61. Puka Nacua ran a 4.57. CeeDee Lamb ran a 4.51. Those are all pro level wide receivers. You're not faster than them. So don't tell me that you're a sophomore in high school and you got to get ready for this camp that's coming up and you got to get ready for your 40. But the last time I ran a 40 was last year and it was like a 4.5. Like, no, you didn't run a fucking 4.5. You're 14, 15 years old. You're not as fast as CeeDee Lamb.
And by the way, if you are, you need to go run track. Go run track.
Yeah.
Don't be a football player.
Yeah, if you are that fast, you're already running track. You're not coming to me. Come on, let's cut that out right now. Like, if you're in high school right now and you feel like you have to run a 4.5, just understand how fast a 4.5 really is. Watch CeeDee Lamb and tell me that you're as fast as that guy, because I promise you you're not.
Right.
Right. And again, CeeDee Lamb ran that in underwear and track spikes at the 40-yard dash at the combine, and he's never going to run that ever again. Right. So I just want to put that into context, because these numbers get thrown out there and people think like, oh yeah, I can run a 4.5. I'm a pretty good speed. Like, no, like if you can run a 4.9 right now, guess what? That's really fast. If you can run a 4.9 on a laser. Right. And we say that every year, but I feel like that's important to say right now, because people go out there and you just have to manage your expectations. Right. So let's go back into the conversations that I've had with some of the families this week and probably over the past month, because after the season ends, we're in the off season of football training, and this is what people start talking about. They want to get ready for going to camps. They want to get ready for combines, and the 40-yard dash comes up. And for me, as somebody who coaches speed and somebody who coaches these kids who's in this industry, and I admit that, look, I've made a business like charging kids for training, right? Kids are willing to invest in themselves, and I'm all for that. You want to invest in yourself? I'm here to provide some training, some guidance, some mentorship to help you be the best version of yourself. And to me, that's what speed training is. Speed training is to help you feel more confident on the field, to make plays that you couldn't make before, to give you another level to attain. So take your game to the next level. And if that leads to you getting recruited, sure, it's going to get great. But like ultimately, it's because I want you to play better. I've never done the whole come train with me because I can knock off 2/10 of your 40.
Yeah, like, most people I can knock off 2/10 of your 40 by teaching you how to start in 5 minutes. It's not that hard.
Right. I can do that, but that's never been my thing, right? Because the other thing is, like, these kids are valuing themselves off of how fast they can run a 40. And that has nothing to do with your worth as a person, your worth as a kid, and your journey as a young man. Like, holy shit, what are we doing? Like, measuring ourselves based off of 2/10 of a second, right? And so that's what I'm seeing, and kids are stressing out over it. Families are stressing out over it. And then the business side of me says, all right, if I don't do this, somebody's going to do this. Somebody's going to do this and charge them however much money they're going to charge them. And they're going to sell them this snake oil of come and get your 40 faster with me, and you're going to become a Division I recruit. You're going to get an offer because I can make you faster in your 40. So I said, F it, let's just give it away. Right? Like if kids I understand. Like, I'm not going to be able to tell you the 40 doesn't matter. It does. I'm not going to be able to change that. So if it's going to matter, then my choice is to either help you or not help you. And I don't want this to be the thing that you like. I don't want this to be a thing where money is involved, because I don't feel like it should be. Not in this. Right now, if you want to make the long-term investment in yourself to get faster, that is a different story than talking about how do I knock off 2/10 on my 40-yard dash. Right. So I'm going to give it away this weekend. I'm doing it at Onyx at 2:00 for those who are in the area who want to learn about the mechanics of a 40, what it really means to knock off 2/10, because a lot of people just say that, right? Like, what does it really mean to knock off 2/10? How many strides should you take in a 40-yard dash? What should your starting position look like? What should your starting technique look like versus your technique towards the end of the race? I'm going to go over all of that, and I'm going to give it away, because I don't feel like this is information that, one, should be kept, and two, I don't feel like this is something that I need to charge people for. I feel like people are already being sold this false bill of goods, this snake oil of get your Division I offer by running a fast 40. And that's such bullshit. And I hate it so much that I'm willing to give away my time to do this.
I love that you're doing that. It's going to be great to see that. And I told Rachel, I was like, I wish I could come down there and help you out and be an extra set of hands and eyes and everything. Because it's great, and you do such a good job with it. But you've given this knowledge away before. You posted on Instagram the thing that you did with Logan Paulson on the Commander's website last year. Like you did this on TV with a former NFL player in jeans, getting Logan down into the stands. So that's great. Just a couple of things I think to follow up to differentiate and accentuate some points you made. Right, one, if you're in the performance space, coach speed. No one's going to get mad at you, nor should they. That's your job. Right. Don't coach the 40, coach speed. If you have someone who's got a 40 coming up, you'd be doing them a disservice not to get them ready. But as a baseline of what you're doing, coach speed, coach power, coach strength, coach those types of things, coach reactions, coach agility. But none of those things are like, all those things will help with the drills. They will also make your athlete a better athlete, as opposed to just coaching to the drill. Don't teach to the test, teach the material. So that would be thing one. Thing two, I would say this, going back all the way to where you started with CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and specifically Puka Nacua. There's a clip that's been going viral the last couple of weeks talking about Les Snead, the Rams general manager, talking with their head coach, Sean McVay, about Puka Nacua, who did not test very well at the combine. And everyone's, from an NFL team building, Sean McVay had this vision of what he wanted to do with Nacua, and everyone's focused in on that part of the video, understandably. It's like, take a player if you have a plan for them and you understand their skill set. That is true from a coaching football thing. The other thing that slipped in there is Les Snead says, if we rank this guy by GPS data, he'd be top 10 in the class.
Right.
So one thing that I think is going to change even more going forward is you're going to have scouting reports that really devalue the 40, because ultimately your play speed is something that once you get to higher levels, if you are a D1 athlete with aspirations to go to the NFL, or as this technology becomes more available, if GPS becomes available at some of the high schools, which I'm sure actually, like at an IMG, they probably have GPS data. Like I'd imagine that
there's all kinds of GPS data, but I'll go a step further.
Like in the shoulder pads during games. So like we can measure your literal play speed, which is all the 40 is trying to do anyway. It's like, how fast are you when you actually play? And if we have that number, I don't really care that much about the 40. We actually talked about that with Logan last year in our Combine Roundtable episode, which people can go back in the feed and listen to. But like, the point is to make them better players. That will lead to production, catches, yards, whatever, or goals if we're talking about soccer player, whatever. But also the more easily available data becomes, we don't have to come up with tests to get the data. We have the data, and people who are scouting and providing scholarship or professional offers will look at that and favor that because it's real as opposed to a test.
Yes, and I think that we've had this conversation with some of the coaches, and we've had with some of the players and agents and stuff like that, right? Like, yes, I'll even go a step further with the GPS. Is you can take this stuff off of film now, right? There's AI and real analytics and next gen stats that can take your miles per hour and your acceleration rates just by looking at your film. And like you said, like, would I rather have a projection of the number or an actual number? Because the 40-yard dash is a projection of how fast you are. Game speed is how fast you actually are. So if I can get a number on your miles per hour and your acceleration with the ball in your hands, with the helmet and shoulder pads on in November when we're playing football, that's a much better number to me than a 40-yard dash indoors in underwear in track spikes. Of course, that's a better number, right?
Right.
Now, here's some inside information for people who are listening to this. What some people don't understand is all of the combines that you go to, whether it be like an Under Armour 247, what's the other one out there that's Rivals and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
coaches pay for that information, right? So they value that information because they're paying for it.
True.
Right. So like if I'm the coach at University of Maryland or whatever, right? If I'm a coach at a Power 5 school, I'm paying Rivals for that information. So that's why I want that verified score, because I paid money for this, so I got to get something from this. You see what I'm saying? So like
Totally.
there are other services out there where you could get verified times, verified in-game stats, but like coaches don't want to pay for that. So we're going to use what we're paying for, which is the Under Armour Combine. We want you to run at the Under Armour Combine because we're paying for that score, right?
Right.
So I want to throw that out there because I don't think that people really kind of understand the economics behind some of this stuff and some of the where the money is exchanging. So people should know that. People should know that colleges pay for the services of being able to get those scores, just like you have to pay to go do the Rivals Combine or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So that's the first point. We talked about like the GPS as well as the real analytics, right? And then finally, like, here's why the NFL Combine matters. We know how fast that you're supposed to run. We can project what you're going to run. Like, so much of the NFL Combine, especially for when we talk about linemen, right? Like, doesn't matter for a lineman. What these coaches want to see is like, how much do you love football? Because that's actually the number one question that a lot of NFL scouts, GMs, coaches want to know. Totally. Is like, do you love football? Are you going to dedicate your life to this? Are you going to say no to parties and friends? Are you going to discipline yourself? Because if you can't do that just to get yourself ready for this combine, how do we expect you to do that for games? How do we expect you to watch film if you're not even willing to put the work in to show well at the combine?
Right.
So much of showing well at the combine.
Yeah. Exactly.
So much of showing well at the combine isn't necessarily what your score is. It was, hey, did you take preparation for this combine seriously? That's what we wanted to see. You know what I mean? So I feel like those are things that people don't see that you and I have privilege to see. So I'm spreading word on this right now to give people some perspective of what's really happening in Indianapolis, what's really been happening behind these combines and things, so that they have an understanding of like where this all comes from. And then you make your decision. Look, you want to run a fast 40? Cool, I'll help you. But I want to make sure that you understand what you're doing. I'm not going to sell you something with this dream and this hope that you think that you think that it's something that's not.
No, I think, that's really well put. And, ultimately it's going to come down to the interview process, like at the professional level, the interview process and your tape. Your numbers are really just an affirmation of your tape. And depending on the position, they don't care about your 40 time if you're a lineman, but they do care about your 10-yard split. And so that's going to come from training your explosiveness. It's not, and yes, some technique, but it goes down to that, like, do you care enough to put in the time? This is a way to showcase it. And at the lower levels, who knows what college coaches and high school coaches are looking for.
Oh my God.
But if you're a 2,000-yard receiver, you're probably getting noticed.
Yeah, right. And if you're not a 2,000-yard receiver and you're not 6'4" and 220, if you don't look like A.J. Brown as a high schooler and you're wondering why you're not being recruited, the easiest answer that a coach is going to give you is going to be like, hey, well, we need to see your 40 time. It's not because that's what's actually, that's just a way of him getting you out of his face. And I hate to say that, but that's kind of the honest truth here, is that coach is just telling you that to get you out of his face because you're asking why your kid's not being recruited, and he's going to give you something without, giving you a real answer.
Right, for sure. All right, so for more on what Chris is doing, check him out on Instagram at Trainer Gorres. And if you're in the Richmond area, definitely go to Onyx 2 p.m. on Saturday, and you can get more from him. If you want more coverage of the NFL Combine, the Hoffman Show, 4 to 7 every day on the Team 980.
I guess who will be back at the Combine this year?
Yeah, and it's now as good a time as any to announce. We will be there again. So very excited for that. We'll do a bunch of different stuff, bunch of different interviews, kind of the same stuff that we always do. But it's good every year. Always great to catch up with all of our guys and gals in the training and fitness world. We had such great chats with like Araya last year and Kendall and everybody at Exos. So we'll see if we can get Hills back on this year. So we got a bunch of stuff that we are starting to plan. As for now, just thanks for listening to the podcast. Subscribe wherever you are listening. We are going to start put the podcast back on YouTube as well. Just nice, easy, clean edit. And as for this weekend, Chris, go Lions.
Go Lions, yeah. So I wore this hat for the YouTube in case you post this on YouTube. Because, again, we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon before the NFC Championship
Thursday
game. So, we're all rooting for the Lions here.
For sure. All right. Get your grit. Go Lions. And we'll see you next time on the Train with the Best podcast.